Hi, everybody. This is day 1600. Oh my gosh. Yep. And 98. 1698. Okay. Wow. It's just, and it's moving so fast. Right now, ever since January 20th, 2025, it's moving so fast. President Trump is moving so fast. Um, People, I don't, I talk to people and they go, "Oh yeah, he's doing so much," but I don't think they realize how much. It's so fast, and this is such a complicated, I've said it, convoluted case, and you know, um, and it's big. It's one of the top cases, really one of the top cases ever. Maybe the top case ever. It's way bigger than the Iran Contra. Richard's whistleblowing and the Walmart mass shooting, and then his retaliation and murder and cover up. It is so big. In order to want to do something like that, um, it has to be big, right? It has to be cartel tied. It has to be cartel tied to the military, cartel tied to the judiciary, cartel tied to the law enforcement, cartel tied to criminal trafficking. And so let me get into a little bit. It's so big. And weapons smuggling, right? Weapons smuggling. So, okay. Wow. So, Richard, 1,698 days since Richard was premeditatedly, treasonously retaliated against, unprotected, and systematically murdered and covered up and cover up. Okay, that's just not, I didn't say that at the very beginning, did I? I was on the streets, I was on the corners with the megaphone. I was calling for Richard. I was talking to the media there, and I was saying, this is the only time in my motherhood that I hope my child was a real jerk, but he wasn't. He wasn't. He's sparkling clean. He's a hero. He's a hero. And do I like that? I mean, I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud. But he was absolutely, this case is about him reporting the cartel tied criminal trafficking to Fort Bliss, the Walmart mass shooting case, the subsequent retaliation, continuous severe retaliation against him, unjust, using the tools that we've entrusted to our leadership against him, weaponizing the system against him, and systematically murdering him, and then weaponizing the system to cover it up. What do I mean by that? That they weaponize the system against Judge Roger Rodriguez, who in January of 2022, not by any notification by the FBI, the CID, General Bernabe, General McConville, General Donna Martin, well, 3-star, those are flags. Anyway, not by any notification of them, but by Judge Roger Rodriguez himself notifying us in January of 2022, saying, take my name down, take these names down. CID agent Tavita Nusa, Leilani Hart, convicted criminal Leilani Hart. They are leaking, tampering. And, and he thought I would not understand. But we had already reported, and he didn't know this because I didn't know him. And I can tell you, I didn't trust him. I didn't trust anyone at the time. And when he said they were leaking, I started trusting him. I knew that he was the real deal because we had reported the leaking on November 9th, 2020. Earlier than that, but November 9th, 2020 was a really big day because that was the facade, the dog and pony show, the scam task force find Richard Halliday meeting. But it did have over 15 plus agencies there with multiple individuals from the agencies, which was international because there was Mexican agencies there and Interpol. And so, we had, and this was my task there. Rob had certain tasks, I had tasks, and we brought witnesses with us, which they wanted to deny us, but we insisted. And I stood up and I said, something's wrong in the CID. There's leaks. There's leaks. And I read off the leaks. I read them off that there is something wrong with this case. And 15 plus agencies were like statues. They were like statues. They didn't move. They were almost without breath because they knew that Richard had been murdered. They knew his remains were found. They knew what I was saying was absolutely right, part of a cover up, that our intelligence agencies were weaponized, that our military had been weaponized against this young soldier and family. And so in January 2022, absolutely, it was amazing that Judge Roger Rodriguez, and this is not really what I wanted to talk about. I really want to talk about the judges because the judges are so important. But I don't come on here with notes. I just do it with really very seldom do I have some notes, and I just do it from my heart. And I'm telling you from memory that day I will never forget when Judge Roger Rodriguez called to notify us that there were leaks and with names, and that Leilani Hart is the mother of Dallas Wayne Hart, Richard's platoon leader, connected to Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia and Danae Katzen, who was later, admittedly, with Richard's possessions and tied to cartel trafficking network and married to an individual and connected to Richard's unit and more, and connected to the chief medical examiner, um, Roscoe Ortiz, and more, connected to KTSM. This is, goes on and on. KTSM, connected to Juarez. Juarez by Casita Hoffman, which is then connected to NGOs, powerful NGOs. You know, it was such a big deal. You know, you had Nadal Bayim connecting a Palestinian. He's a Palestinian with a record of terroristic threats. And his son-in-law is G3, 32nd ADCOM with top secret um, access clearance. And that's Richard's operational command. You, you know, you could go on and on and on with how serious this is. And you have Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe saying this is nothing, that there's no foul play, that nothing is wrong with his unit, that Nadal Baim is nobody, ignoring the security breaches that clearly we have identified, going along with CID and telling us that they can do nothing unless we bring them the leads. You know, I didn't really want to talk about Sean Bernabe because to talk about Sean Bernabe is so grotesque, so grotesque. He needs to be totally, y'all, it's so bad because under his watch on Fort Bliss, hundreds of thousands of children, 10,000 at a time, were trafficked and processed and now are mostly dead. Hundreds of thousands under his watch were processed and now are mostly dead. 10,000 at a time. That emergency intake center that was opened up early in 2021 was under his watch. And these children, hundreds of thousands, it's so big. That emergency intake center was so big, it could take 10,000 at a time. And hundreds of thousands of them were processed through that and now are mostly dead. To talk about Sean Bernabe is to want to throw up, is to want to cry out to heaven for mercy that we have not said enough, that we have not done enough. He was promoted. He used taxpayers' money. That's your money, my money. That is taxpayers' money, federal money, to run this criminal trafficking horror death camp. And now right over the border, and I mean, it's close. You can walk it over the border. Mexico is so close. They are finding numerous, over a half a dozen, I think over a half a dozen now, of death camps with crematoriums. To talk about Sean Bernabe, it'll ruin you. Yeah. So, what I really want to talk about are the judges or the impersonating individuals as official officers that have no legitimacy, or rogue judges that have been funded to be appointed. Somebody's hands were greased because these are individuals that do not have any intention of honoring their oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. Somebody's hands were greased to put these individuals in this position. And when you're talking about criminal trafficking and you're talking about substances or weapons or ammunition or children or organs or um, females or whatever, human trafficking, when you're talking about it, you're talking about billions and billions of dollars. That greases a lot of hands. I would call it with blood. And therefore, from the beginning, when we knew um, this was big and something was happening because of the way they were reporting on Richard and what we absolutely knew to be true, and we knew that they were lying because we knew what was true, and it was hard for us to relate that to the public so that the public would believe us, especially during the lockdown, right? Especially when you have everybody in fear, everybody not in fear so much as, getting sick or whatever, but in fear for their businesses, in fear for the divide in their family, the chaos that it created in churches and communities, the protests that were not peaceful, that were uh, targeting opportunity zones, people losing their possessions, expensive possessions, and their businesses while facing the absolute chaos of a close down, of having to stress out to breathe, literally to stress out in order to breathe. We knew that the way they were going about it was very corrupt, very corrupt, and it was very difficult to get the message out because people had their own problems, right? And we understood that. And we knew that we had to be patient. And we knew we had to be vigilant. And we knew that we had to investigate and that we needed to document and we needed to file and keep doing that until, because all things end. And it did end. And it really gloriously ended on January 20th, 2025, when President Trump changed everything, didn't he? In one day, that glorious day, when the Sinaloa cartel were designated the Big T organization, up to no good. That was a glorious day. And now we are 2 months in, and they delay, right, with the FBI, with Department of Justice. And don't forget, this is really important. The Biden administration years weaponized the intelligence community and the law enforcement community. And we saw that very clearly for the most part. Of course, the judiciary a little bit, but really, really the FBI and the law enforcement. The prosecutors, yes, because they let so many criminals go, right? But they absolutely, especially with the January 6th committee, you saw very clearly with the January 6th individuals arrested very quickly. And, even knowing that they had weaponized the FBI, going there, um, having to face what we saw, which was a setup, and seeing how um, innocent people or people that were overcharged or over sentenced. The FBI absolutely was weaponized against these individuals, and we were there, and we absolutely did not hesitate to keep that quiet. I mean, to say it out loud. We did not keep that quiet that we had attended the January 6th. We repeated it and posted it all the time in hopes that media and law enforcement would take notice and ask us, you know, and ask us what we saw and what happened. And they didn't. They did not. Can you believe it? And we live streamed from there. They didn't require any of our videos. They didn't require any of our live streams. They didn't, wanted to know anything about nothing, nothing. I mean, Facebook um, closed down my ability to do live streams, right? And God prepared, right? Because at the Task Force Find Richard Halliday meeting, I refused to wear the mask, and they didn't like that. So they gave me a shield. And during my dream at night, it said, "Wear your shield." An angel, an angel. I don't know how else to describe it. Said, "Wear your shield, and you can do your live stream." I was like, "Wow." I got up. I thought, "Okay, I can wear my shield. Let me try it." And I could do my live stream. And I realized at that moment that it was facial um, recognition software that was keeping me from doing the live stream. But God wanted me to do the live stream. And I did like 25 days or so, 26 days with a face shield. So we have absolutely done miraculous things because this is God's hand is all over this. And during that time, it was the intelligence agencies. That's why when I was able to, um, together, we were able to trace the burner phones that were harassing us day in and day out for months. For months. They led to intelligence agencies. That's where they led to. Individuals connected to intelligence agencies, the intelligence agency themselves. So during that Biden era, it really was the intelligence agencies that were predominantly the weaponized group, the weaponized agency on taxpayer dime. Okay, on taxpayer dime, all of this. I mean, where's the restitution? Every one of those FBI agents and whoever was in charge needs to pay restitution because they absolutely wrongly used their position and their tools. They were supposed to defend the Constitution. Now things have changed, right? Now things have changed. It is a judiciary that is now weaponized. And many people are impatient with Kash Patel, the FBI director. But Dan Bongino just got in there and they're figuring out who they can trust. I think that's my opinion. And what's going on in those intelligence agencies. And I know from reading all the comments that people are very impatient with Pam Bondi of the Department of Justice, the Secretary of Justice, right? They're very impatient. And, I would say we're 2 months in and things are happening very quickly. And I think that there is a push by everybody. We are so sick and tired of the lawlessness. And when you have a military base like Fort Bliss that sets up a death camp that can have 10,000 children at one time and spends taxpayers' money for years, hundreds of thousands of children trafficked, and now mostly dead. And then you have soldiers that call that out, call the weapons smuggling out, call the ammunition smuggling out, and they're targeted and they're killed in the line of duty. Right? In the line of duty, we got that January 25th, 2025. And we've been trying to figure out what that means that they did April 24th. What's the difference between April 24th, where they declared him deceased, right, on Fort Bliss? So that's murdered on Fort Bliss. And then you get January 25th, 5 days after President Trump takes office, declared that they found him in the line of duty at the time of death, which is murdered on Fort Bliss for being retaliated as an act of retaliation for his whistleblowing, for his reporting. There's no other explanation. None. Run it as much as you can through any kind of scenario, and you only get one scenario. And Bernabe did not. All that time we spent with him, meetings and meetings, right? And him lying and lying and lying to us. And when Richard was declared deceased in April 24 or 2024, you think he would write a letter of condolence? And he was at Fort Hood, Fort Cavazos, which is still that command structure. And now, January 25th, 2025, there's nothing again. And let me tell you, and I can't repeat what he was telling us, because I don't think that would do the case any good, because they would just maybe even videotape me saying stuff like that and putting it out there like it's real, like it's true, right? But it was so bad, so egregious, and so wrong that I can't even say it. And you can get a clue, because he allowed 10,000 children at a time, hundreds of thousands of children, to be trafficked on his footprint, on taxpayers' dime, against the Constitution of the United States, to grease a lot of hands. And now those children are mostly dead. It's disgusting. And he allowed Richard to be smeared when Richard is the hero. He's the one sparkling clean. And Sean Bernabe is allowed to wear our uniform, to wear our stars, to receive all the benefits of that, and was promoted. And he is the worst of the worst. It just shows you the what we need to be patient for, right? What we're up against. And we're just not patient anymore, because people are getting killed. So I think it's a very good thing to put pressure on Pam Bondi. Write those little notes saying, let's get this done. Let's get this done. And the same thing with Kash Patel. And I have this nature where, I want to say, okay, I understand what they're up against, because we've been up against so much. So, come on. But no, if we can't sleep, they can't sleep, because lives are being ruined. And Judge Roger Rodriguez is still alive. And when you see the timeline, and, I couldn't put everything in that timeline. There's so much to go in that timeline, because the whole Yvonne Rosales thing. And, they had to get her out and get their usurper in, their compromised usurper, their cartel tied usurper, someone that would look the other way of hundreds of thousands of children being trafficked right on their footprint too, because Fort Bliss is their footprint, the prosecutor's office. And don't forget, you had the whole mandate thing, and you had the whole Walmart case thing. I mean, it was crazy, and they wanted to get away with everything. And they shouldn't get away with anything. And it was when Yvonne Rosales was forced and in duress, and it doesn't look like her signature on the resignation, the end of 2022. It's no coincidence that in January of 2023, the retaliation against Judge Rodriguez and the Halliday family commenced in full force. There is no coincidence. And with who? With Leilani Hart, a convicted criminal, such a huge history of criminal activity. And she speaks Chinese, by the way, with a huge history of criminality that dates back before Richard was even born. And then her criminality, she was kicked out of the veterans group. The media didn't report that. She was kicked out of Park University. The media didn't report that. I mean, she was not allowed to go back. She was making false claims against their staff, their major staff there, causing all kinds of havoc there at Park University. But they didn't report that she's an unreliable source. She was the military police had to go to even her place of worship because what was there, an assault? Right? I mean, she's she's one problem person, and they used her and did not give any background to try to discredit a very credible, honorable judge, Judge Roger Rodriguez. We've looked at, us, we're investigators now. We are investigators. That whole all the narratives, where is the police reports? Where is the social media? Where is Leilani's outrage right after and all her social posts and all this stuff like that? She has nothing. It's just such baloney. And then who's her friend? Melendez. No, not Melendez. Mendez. Carlos Mendez. It's probably Melendez too. Jesus Melendez, the canine cop. Mendez, right? Carlos Mendez, who claimed to be a veteran. He's not a veteran. That's stolen valor. That's stolen valor. And I don't even want to mention his connection to a Bernabe. I'll leave that for the investigators because we have to bring them leads, right? We have to bring them leads. I mean, it is all coming out. And Pam Bondi has a big job to do. She has a very big job. And we have given her lots of tools and lots of funding. She can do it. And she needs to do it. Yeah. There's there's a little yeah. And it's kind of like they have to be driven to do their duty because the swamp is so sticky. The swamp is so sticky. They have to be driven to do their duty. Not everybody is a Teflon man. It's very sticky stuff. So we have to drive them to drive her to do her duty, drive Cash Patel to do his duty. And the people are the mandate. This is a government by the people for the people of the people. And that's why they spend so much money trying to warp our brains, trying to, with all the propaganda. And Richard, they just couldn't do. He was too firm. He was too firm in his faith and knowledge. And two, he absolutely knew, because I'm his mom, we talked about it all the time. He absolutely knew that the government twisted and turned minds. And he had to be very careful with that. And that's why he didn't, I feel like it gave him a foundation that they couldn't compromise him, because they try to compromise us all so that they can do their evil duty, their evil duty to their masters that are requiring the criminal trafficking, requiring the access to children, the access to substances, the access to the weapons and to the billions of dollars and the ammunition and whatnot, and to the organs. Um, but we have to do what's right, because if we allow them, and if we think they're too big, you know, God is the heavyweight champion, y'all. He gives weight to all things. Nothing compares to him. He's the giant. He's the, like I said, and I used to tell the kids this, he's the heavyweight champion of creation. He's it. And nothing is, he just laughs in derision of these evil that, you know, wants to do these things. And you can ask, this is the big question, why does he allow these things to happen? So you will know how wide, how high, how deep, how indescribably big the love of God is. And that might sound like, really? Really? But who's God? Right? But who's God? Every word that proceeds from his mouth is law word. And if we want to know the love of God, God around us, right? Christ over us, Christ beside us, Christ under us, Christ in front of us, Christ behind us. If we want to know that, then we need to love his law word, know how to restrain our own will and do his will. His will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And what we have seen are those that are trying to fulfill their desires, their wants, their will, whatever, their law. They're lawless. They're lawless. They don't want law. They don't want boundaries. They don't want, the sacraments. They don't want the sacraments. They don't want uh, all the art and the architecture and the unbelievable, wonderful food and, uh, the progression of of a lawful society, of a God fearing society. They don't want that. And we've seen it. We've seen the destruction of the opportunity zones. We've seen the destruction of our soldiers, of our children. We've seen the destruction of our families. We've seen the destruction of our businesses. And that's the lawless world. No consideration for property rights, no consideration for honoring oaths, no consideration for honoring life, and they'll try to bend us and everything with this whole um, um, green agenda, that they care about the environment, and yet they will go and burn Teslas with these batteries that are so toxic when they're burning like that. They don't care about the environment when they burn and destroy crematoriums. They don't care about the environment. So this is very political. This is very political because we are a country of the people, by the people, for the people. And that's why it takes patience, because we're changing minds and hearts. And really, God's changing minds and hearts and all of this, letting everyone see, uh, with me, without me, with me, without me, right? With me, without me. That, do you want life? Do you want prosperity? Do you want progression? Or do you want death and the gnashing of teeth going down in a dark spiral? He's letting us see it. And that's why I got some really good feedback today saying, "Wow, I think you're doing it. I think you're doing it. I think you're going to get justice for Richard." And I'm like, "Well, we're not going to give up, because our grandchildren are going to say my grandparents fought for their son. They never gave up." And that they will pass on to their children, and that will be passed on to their children. And that is, you can't put a price on that. And my mom was telling me, we're not a family that gives up. My Oma, everything she went through, she didn't give up. My grandparents on my father's side, everything they went through, they didn't give up. We're not a family that gives up. And I'm going to tell you, everything they went through, I can't even tell you how poor my Oma was. She didn't even have hot running water in her apartment. She had a beautiful little apartment, no hot running water. She had a kettle, and she would boil water. Or in the bathroom, she had this bigger kettle that she would boil water to take a bath. Um, she was such a happy person. Such a happy person. And it's like some of these very wealthy people, they are so miserable. And here I've been surrounded with happy people, hardworking, that never give up, and happy people with maybe just a penny, a dime in their pocket. So, yeah, we're not going to give up. This is absolutely. Can you imagine? I'm like, oh my gosh, when we get accountability, um, it's going to be so glorious, and we're going to get accountability. especially when today I was told, I think you've done it. I think you've done. Yeah, well, we've broke this case a long time ago, and now it's just getting the accountability. And we're getting more and more and more institutional support. And as they clean things up, who knows what all they're what all they have to put up with. But as they get everything cleaned up, and we're not patient anymore. We're sick of this. And when I'm saying I'm talking about a lot of people because I'm reading a lot of comments, and it's like so many people are sick of this criminal activity, and they want law. They want the new sheriff in town, and they want his administration to establish law. And that goes to the what I really wanted to talk about, and that is to these judges, these rogue judges, these judges up to no good, like David Guadarrama. The public is getting sick and tired of the lawlessness. And I don't think that the weaponization of the judiciary is going to work. I don't think that the judges have the people on their side. And if they are in bad conduct, if they are with bad conduct, in bad conduct, not defending the Constitution, not doing what the people want them to do, because we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And they're sick and tired of this weaponization. I don't think this weaponization of the judiciary is going to work. And I hope that, you keep going on social media and keep going on, if you're lucky enough to go on other media and everything, to absolutely say, no, he does not, and she does not. Judge Guadarrama, what he did to Patrick Crucius, and, it was not justice. I can tell you that. It was not justice. It was all for the money, all for the open checkbook, all to grease hands. That's what that was. And he needs to be held accountable. That's bad conduct. And if you're in bad conduct, you should never be a judge. So that's really what I wanted to talk about. And you can apply that to many other judges. And I haven't even gotten to those impersonators that are not even judges, that need to be held accountable for their impersonating judicial officers. That is so egregious. And those that are allowing it to happen. And I think that Governor Abbott needs to act quick. And he hasn't. And he's known this for a long time. A long time. So, yeah, we have to be impatient. But anyway, thank you so much I know we're burning the midnight. We're at 1 o'clock already here. Um, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on. Thank you, Anicia, for coming on and listening. And just this long, long podcast, but long live stream. But oh, we really appreciate it. We love you. Thank you so much. And please share. God bless.